Hi, so to build on what Katoa said in our last interview, I'm Morgana Angeli, and this is Reset Revolution. It is a continuation of some work related to social justice that we did over the summer, but now the focus has shifted. Our aim throughout this account is to create an accessible and educational platform whereby people can learn about structures and concepts of social injustices through testimonies and interactive interviews rather than just through a textbook. So today I'm joined with Miriam Ingrid, ISB alumni and good friend of mine. Hi, Miriam.
Hi.
They're now lead actor in HBO Nordic's Beartown, a story about a small town in rural Sweden whereby the community must decide between holding the alleged rapist, captain of the hockey team, accountable or overlooking the crime. So Miriam, I'm really happy you could join us today. I want to start talking about the role you played in the show. You were the general manager's daughter, right? What was your experience playing the role of a rape survivor?
Right. So I play Maya Anderson in the show. She is a rape survivor, as you said. It's a show based off of a book written by Fredrik Backman, a really famous Swedish writer. And so it was a really interesting process for me as an actor, since I had never really done such a big project before. I'd only filmed short films. And so this was definitely one of the hardest projects to take on for me. But I also felt really lucky to be that person. I was gifted the part of Maya. And so it was certainly something very difficult for me to do, to put myself in that position of vulnerability in order to tell such an important story. Like I said, I felt very lucky to be that person. I always wanted to act in dramas that had important storylines and messages, and I certainly think that Beartown is one of them.
Thank you. And to add on to this, how did you feel filming the scenes where you were most vulnerable? How did the people with you in the cast react? And was it an emotional toll? Did it take an emotional toll on you?
Definitely. I think we were all prepared for what was about to come, because, we'd all read the script and everyone knew what was about to happen. I was 17, so everyone had to take that into account as well, in order to create a good work environment, a workplace environment that is safe for everyone. And so we had a lot of conversations about how we were going to go around the entire scene and how my character is portrayed throughout the entire show, basically. And so I feel like we were really prepared, but we were also kind of hesitant and scared to do this, since, I had never really acted, like I said, in such a big project. And so it was certainly something I didn't really feel as prepared as I should have been. And so we actually had to do the scene twice. We had to redo it another day, because the first time that we did it, it didn't really end up looking good. It didn't really end up looking natural or realistic. And since it's the turning point for the show, it's really important that the portrayal is done well. So we had to redo it. And the second time around, we actually got ourselves some stunt doubles to choreograph it all, so that it could feel less real, and more of, me as an actor and not me as Miriam Ingrid, So it was, I think the collaboration between cast and crew was really important to in the making of the show, since we all cared for each other. And so the workplace environment became really calm, instead of a situation where I felt nervous. And so the second time around, we did it, and it ended up looking realistic, which is what the show needed.
Yeah, thank you for that. And why do you believe that it was important to have that realistic portrayal of this scene? Why, like, a fake one or an overtly violent one would not have fit with what you were trying to do?
I mean, I think at times I was a bit worried about how graphic we were making it. I didn't really feel like it was that important to the show to be that graphic and it show such a traumatic event in such detail. And I was worried that the audience wouldn't like it. And but that's the point of it. Since it's such an integral part of the show, we really needed to make it as real as possible. And that meant, forcing ourselves into that kind of a situation. And after we did it all, I'm actually very grateful for how it turned out, since a lot of my friends and family members have told me that with like the show wouldn't really be the same without it. Unfortunately, it's one of those scenes that is needed in order to push the focus back to, you know, equality and a difficult situation and how a society reacts to that. So I think the show wouldn't be the same without it, and unfortunately, it is needed to shine light on such a disastrous event.
So to tie what you just said, one of the questions that were asked before this interview was what is your opinion on 13 Reasons Why? They have some overtly explicit and violent scenes, and maybe that kind of relates with what you did, and maybe you can understand that better.
Yeah, I mean, I did watch 13 Reasons Why, and I understand that connection between that show and ours. And I do believe that it was as important to that show to display such a graphic scene as well, because it just shifts the attention from the people to an event, and how that in turn affects the people. So it's much less about the characters and more about that traumatic event. And I think that a show like 13 Reasons Why is important to our to reflect on our teenage lives, but at the same time, it has been critiqued as something that is over romanticizing situations and self-harm and mental health issues. And I think that what differentiates Beartown from 13 Reasons Why is the fact that we don't romanticize what happened. We show it in such an explicit way in order to portray a situation where their characters are broken. And I think that comes through very well. And that's how people are affected. They don't want to watch, but we kind of force them to see the reality that can happen in close relationships.
That's really interesting. Before this interview, I did a little bit of research to kind of prepare, and I found that TV shows or movies like Beartown and like 13 Reasons Why actually help people speak up about incidents of rape. And I thought that was really, really interesting. And I wanted to talk about how Beartown helps like demystify the myth of toxic masculinity, or demystify toxic masculinity and why it's not good. And I wanted to talk about that, and how through the sports and the facts that people justify the actions of the star athlete with boys will be boys. So just let them be boys. What is the weight with that?
I think that's actually what the entire show centers around. That's what our director wanted us to think about, with the audience to think about. That's the message that we want to leave the audience with. The fact that such structures can really build a society and in turn break it down, since the city of Beartown basically falls apart because of these structures. I think we are able to show it through an outside perspective because of the fact that Maya, you know, she moves into town. She hasn't lived there all her life. So for her, this is something new. This isn't really something that she agrees with. And that's why her character is so special. The fact that she is able to understand what's happening all around her. Meanwhile, her dad is a part of these structures. And I think Beartown really shows that journey really well, from going from a person who, you know, is privileged because of the structures to realizing the privilege. Peter Anderson is that character who benefits from boys will be boys and toxic masculinity, but because of the event and the rape, he realizes how it has, you know, broken his family down, and how it has ruined the society as a whole, and he tries to fight against it. And yeah.
That's really interesting. Do you think that Beartown accurately portrays society as we know it today? Do you think is it all fictional, or are there a lot of elements that are true?
I think that it definitely portrays a version of reality that exists in small towns, in isolated areas of the world, and definitely in the sports category. This is something that is real. It happens very often, and the fact that rape survivors or victims aren't able to speak up because of the fact that their society doesn't let them. So it is a fictional story, but it has its roots in reality and in something that actually happens quite often. And so I definitely think that we display it realistically. And since we had actors from up north, since our version of Beartown is depicted as up north in Sweden, we had actors who actually have lived there and actors who have played hockey their entire lives. And that adds to this perspective a lot more, since they were able to give their opinions on certain scenes and the way they talk and their dialogue. So I think this is as real as it can get, basically.
Thank you. That's really interesting. And finally, one of the last questions from our question section. It's what is the difference between a series like Game of Thrones or American Horror Story that use rape as plot points and Beartown? Like, why are they different?
So I actually haven't seen those shows, but I do know that, our version is telling the story through the eyes of teenagers. And I think that those shows don't really have that element of it all. Like we depict this reality from a teenage perspective, since it's something that isn't really talked about. The fact that this can happen to a lot of people. I know a lot of people who have similar stories and who've told me about it. So I think that that's what sets us apart from others. Also, just the fact that we are from Sweden, this is a Swedish story, although it's pretty universal. We show a scenario that I don't think has been portrayed in the mainstream media, because Sweden is such a small country, and I think the use of language is definitely new to the mainstream media, and it's fresh. Well, we've seen hockey stories before, but this is something new. And so relating back to Game of Thrones and American Horror Story, I think what sets us apart from those stories is the fact that we are telling this from a teenage perspective, and using actors who haven't worked before as actors. So I think the authenticity is what makes the show really good.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what I wanted to hear. So thank you very much for taking the time and joining us today. And everyone else watching, thank you for taking the time. So to get ready for this Sunday at 4 p.m., we have Sarah, who's going to be joining us, and she's going to be joined by Vincent Thorold, a French high schooler. And they're going to discuss the extent to which countries should let their inhabitants do what they want, with reference to freedom of speech in France. So join us. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.